I had just moved in 2 days earlier, a modest apartment in Chicago, old floors, creaky pipes, stubborn windows, but it felt like mine. Or at least it would, eventually. Nate and I had finally agreed this would be our start. We'd been engaged for a year, and though work kept pulling us in opposite directions, we decided it was time to share a space. He was away on a retreat with his firm, so I unpacked alone, one box at a time. No rush, no pressure, just me, some music, and the soft hum of a new beginning. That's when I opened the hallway closet. It was deeper than I expected, and there, in the far back corner, sat a single box. Old, labeled in careful slanted handwriting. Truth. I paused. It wasn't mine. Probably left by the previous tenant. The landlord had mentioned something about forgotten belongings, said I could toss anything I didn't want, but something about this box felt deliberate, not abandoned, left. For someone, maybe for me. I sat down with it on the hardwood floor, sunlight casting lines through the blinds. Inside were folders, photos, printed emails, names I didn't recognize, faces I didn't know. Except one. Nate, not in a photo, in an email, a long thread archived, not addressed to him, but about him. It was cryptic, descriptions, observations, almost like someone had studied him. I flipped through more pages. There were patterns, timelines, events, meetings, trips. It didn't make sense. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just curious and a little unsettled. Then I found a note. Not to me, but written as if to anyone who might understand. Betrayal rarely comes with a warning. Sometimes it's in the way they smile, the way they say your name. I saved everything, not to destroy them, but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. I sat back, hands trembling. This wasn't a diary. It was evidence of something or someone unspoken. I didn't know what to do with it, so I closed the box, slid it back into the closet, and made a cup of tea. But that night, while brushing my teeth, I kept hearing one sentence over and over. Sometimes it's in the way they smile. And for the first time, I realized how often Nate smiled when I talked, but never really listened. I must have stared at that photo for an hour. It wasn't just seeing Nate in the picture, it was how he looked, relaxed, confident, familiar, like he belonged. The photo was dated 2018, 3 years before we met. I turned it over, scribbled words on the back. Agency Team Retreat, Lake Geneva. I asked him that night, holding it casually. Hey, know a Valerie from Chicago? He squinted, took the photo, barely looked at it. Oh, her. We did some freelance stuff together. Nothing big. But he said it too quickly, dismissively, practiced. And his hand? It trembled just slightly. That's when the hum began, that low, electric hum of suspicion. I wasn't looking for anything, but something had already found me. I Googled Valerie plus Chicago. There wasn't much, but what I found: corporate headlines, one viral exposé, something about a massive takedown, a leak. I skimmed the article. The names listed weren't familiar, except one. N. Carlisle. Involved peripherally. No official comment. Nate's last name is Carlisle. My fingers froze. Peripheral, but always close enough to benefit.
But betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. It started with Lena, the friend who swore she'd always be by my side. I found late-night texts between her and Mark. He said it was work, but I knew better. Then came a business trip that didn't exist. Perfume on his collar that wasn't mine. Hotel charges under her name. And the worst part? It wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. Lena knew everything, my insecurities, my dreams, my routines. She didn't just betray me, she studied me. I was humiliated, but not broken. That night, as I sat alone in the dark, my pain turned into something colder: resolve. I began investigating, quietly, patterns, receipts, emails, call logs. I mapped it all out. Turns out it wasn't just them. Eric, Mark's business partner, he once called me by the wrong name, a name I found in a hidden email thread. Laura, another friend. She always knew things I hadn't shared. It was a network of liars, smiling in my face while stabbing my back. My living room turned into a caseboard: pins, notes, strings. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared.
I thought about confronting him. I imagined it 100 ways. Me storming in, demanding answers, throwing his laptop across the room. But that would have made me loud, and he already owned the stage. So I did the opposite. I became silent, not weak, just strategic. I started observing like a stranger in my own home, noticing how he talked to me like a mentor, not a partner, noticing how he always had justifications ready before I asked anything. I began cataloging his patterns, not just what he took from me, but how. How he shifted blame, how he spun half-truths into full narratives, how he smiled through it all. I realized something vital. He wasn't stealing because he lacked ideas. He was stealing because he thought I would notice. Or worse, that I would notice, and still wouldn't matter. I started showing up more, not dramatically, just enough. I offered to help tweak his branding decks, volunteered to fix slide alignment, recolor graphs, polish typography. "Wow, that looks way better," they'd say, and when we attended networking events, I'd shake hands with his partners, ask smart questions, offer insights. I stayed in the margins, just like I'd always been, but now I was watching. Julian, his partner, was sharp, almost too sharp, the kind who scanned a room twice before speaking. Rachel, the brand strategist, was drowning, always fixing Nate's chaos, always exhausted. I made myself useful, then indispensable. People started messaging me directly. "Could you take a look at this? Your eye for balance is exactly what we need." It wasn't overnight, but week by week, the narrative began to shift. I became invisible, on purpose. No more questions, no more challenges, just quiet observation. At meetings, I sat in corners. I let Nate talk, let him shine. But behind every idea he pitched was me. He didn't notice the version numbers I embedded in file names, didn't see the time-stamped metadata, didn't realize the edits I made were mine alone. And with every file he stole, I had proof. My designs, my strategy decks, my sketches from months ago, all paraded as his innovation. It was no longer theft. It was identity laundering. But now, I had everything cataloged. In silence, I became undeniable. And in the background, something started to shift. His team began to look to me, not with suspicion, but with respect. I needed to be sure, so I created something deliberately flawed, a branding concept for a fictional company, color palettes that clashed, language that didn't align, flowcharts that went nowhere. I accidentally left it open on my tablet, unlabeled, unsaved, unreviewed. A week later it appeared, on stage, in front of a high-profile client. I watched from the back of the room as confusion spread. They were unimpressed, unconvinced. They backed out of the deal. Nate was furious, embarrassed. He blamed the design team, the intern, me. But I didn't flinch, because now I had confirmation. He didn't just take from me. He trusted me so blindly, he couldn't see when I set a trap. Now came the real play. I reached out to people, carefully. Julian, his business partner. Rachel, the strategist who always looked tired, not with accusations but with questions. Did this concept look familiar? Doesn't this draft resemble the one I sent months ago? I showed them progression files, time logs, email chains. Rachel stared at my sketches in silence. Julian ran his hand down his face and said, "So that's why the prototype made no sense." They didn't scream. They didn't call Nate. But slowly, they stopped defending him. A major investor showcase was on the horizon. Press industry leaders, potential global partners. Nate was buzzing with anticipation, practicing speeches, rehearsing his smile, and I helped. I built the deck, polished every slide, chose every font and filter, branded the event from start to finish. He didn't question my support. Why would he? I was still the loyal fiancé, smiling in the crowd, waiting in the wings, but I added something new. A hidden slide. Slide 42. It looked like the others, minimal, clean, but it told the whole story. Dates, designs, signatures, and one headline: Attribution matters. The day arrived. Lights, cameras, champagne, everyone in suits and secrets. Nate began with confidence, clicking through the deck, charming the audience, slide after slide, idea after idea, and then slide 42. At first, no one reacted. Then the murmur started. Julian stood up. Rachel turned pale. One investor leaned forward and said, "Emma? Can you confirm this is your work?" Nate stammered, tried to spin it, blame miscommunication, but the truth was up there, in their inboxes, in their archives. And now, in public, the fallout was fast. The pitch failed, investors pulled out, emails leaked, Julian withdrew from the partnership, Rachel resigned, and sent me flowers. Nate spiraled. He called me, texted, even came to my studio. "Please, don't do this. You're ruining everything." I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just claiming what was already mine." And then I shut the door. Today, I work under my own name, my own clients, my own brand, my own rules. I don't hide anymore. Slide 42 now hangs on my wall, framed in white and gold, not because I need revenge, but because I need to remember. I was never behind him. I was always ahead. He just didn't see me coming. And now, everyone else does.